Hey, Liev, thanks for being here. Um, your personal brand is all about health. What first sparked your personal journey onto this path?
Mm. It's a great question. It's funny why I got onto this journey, and it's sort of hard to pinpoint one thing. I was living a meaningless life. That's for sure. I was chasing money. I was going in school to be a dental surgeon at some point. That was my goal, at least. I was doing biochemistry and microbiology. I did complete that degree, but switched paths rather drastically. Um, what really sparked my transformation onto caring about more meaningful things like my health, my family, community was just a longing for something more, something greater than material, something greater than just the same old stuff, you know, um, craving for a journey, for something that I can put my heart and soul into. And I met my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and that was really one of the most meaningful things, and that's what really led me into looking into health specifically, right? Caring about my health, her health, the health of our future children, and the health of our families, right? Like getting back to these fundamental principles of nature and incorporating that into our lives and having some sort of holistic health, so we can be mentally well, spiritually well, physically well, so that we can live long, meaningful lives on whatever journey, life brings for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can imagine that transition from the traditional path, if I can call it like that, to living a more primal life isn't super easy. Like, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Yeah. It was a slow transition, it wasn't like one day I woke up and I, had all any answers or anything like that, so I was just looking and learning and trying to observe myself. I think that's the greatest challenge was trying to get to know myself, know what's right for me, what's right for my family. And it's not so obvious how to learn about yourself. So, I went down so many different schools of thoughts on how to get to know yourself, and I studied Jungian analytical psychology quite in depth. I'm now formally trained in counseling psychology. Got a master's in it. So I've searched sort of these psychoanalytical side of things. I've searched in the occult. I've searched in religious text. I still find theology fascinating. There's so many different areas where you can kind of search, but the problem is that I kept trying to outsource this process. I was looking for someone to tell me about myself in a way. It seems kind of foolish to say it out loud, but that the biggest challenge was realizing that the answers are within. You have to look within. And not to say that my journey of searching and learning was useless. I'll forever be a student. I always love to learn and I think learning is a good part of becoming, the best version of yourself. But at the end of the day, learning about yourself, becoming the best version of yourself, is a forever journey, but it has everything to do with you. You're the only one that can do that for yourself. And you cannot outsource that. You have to do it yourself. You have to put in the work to try to get to know yourself. And really the only starting point is to start, just to try. And it's good to learn, but you need to try and you need to just go and sit and be quiet and listen to yourself and journal and so many things you can do, but it has to do with just starting the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Imagine you're talking to your younger self who is experiencing, like, I don't know if I want to go on to this path. I want to get to know myself better. What is one practical piece of advice or a practical piece, like, you should be doing this to get to know yourself better?
Mm. Back to nature. Nature is a part of us. Yeah, and so many of my answers came from me going into nature, spending time in silence, just being, existing, not worrying necessarily about what about this, what about that, or going into a meditation, so to speak, with an agenda, just going in, letting everything go, and just letting it go and not worrying about everything. Just leave it behind for a moment. Just spend that time in silence by yourself in nature, observe nature. And nature, our reality is a reflection of ourselves, so when we look outside, it's often representation of our internal world. So, it depends on what you're consuming. If you're constantly consuming the news and social media and whatever it may be, that's going to reflect into your inner world in a negative way, in my opinion. Getting back to these natural principles, getting into nature, it's so simple. That's the easiest starting point is spend more time in nature. You don't need to bring a phone. You don't need to bring a journal. You don't need to have some sort of breath work routine or some sort of meditation or mindfulness practice. You just need to go and be in nature.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that resonates. Whenever I live in a city, so whenever I'm in nature, it's like more sense of freedom, if I can say it like that. So it totally resonates what you're telling me. You have started a private community around health, around nature. Where did that idea come from?
Yeah, well, I'm still building it. We haven't launched yet. It's in the process. The Beyond Touring community. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I haven't monetized any of my content. I went into it just because I was so passionate about the terrain philosophy, about this return to nature, and I just wanted to learn more and I wanted to share. So I started the podcast, I started a YouTube channel, social medias, all this different things, and I didn't monetize any of it. I didn't make a penny, and that was an intentional thing. I didn't want to have some sort of income from it. I wanted to do it because I loved it, because I cared about it, because I was deeply passionate for it. So that was really the initial thing. And, it would have been very easy. I've been contacted by, dozens and dozens of supplement companies wanting me to shill their products. And it just didn't align with my philosophy. And there's never going to be a one size fits all, so I really tried to figure something out that, in my view was ethical. Uh, in trying to earn an income rather than just doing something for the sake of doing it, just doing it for the sake of making money, right? So the community was really a long time coming, and it's a obviously in exchange for a monthly membership fee. You're getting my heart and soul into the community, right? And it's more than just generic PDF guides, one size fits all. I've been in some communities and um it doesn't seem like there's much essence in them, so I'm really trying to put my entire being into this community and provide a framework rather than provide the answers. My goal, the curriculum of the community is to allow, hopefully the community members to come to their own conclusions, be the best version of themselves, look at their own lives and their how they operate, what they're capable of doing, what their situation allows for, because everyone's on a different journey, right? So it'd be very easy to say, everyone should take this supplement and I could sell, 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 but that's not going to be the most meaningful answer, right? So if you're considering taking a supplement, I want to give you the tools to be able to decide which supplement is going to be best for you at which time, which supplements are good, which supplements are bad. How do we judge this? Same when it comes to all of these trends, these diets, all this stuff. It's so confusing, right? So the whole point of the community is that I really want to just impart the ability to discern what's right for you, looking at your own framework. So there's a heavy, emphasis on reflection and sharing, trial and error, wins and losses, all of these things and a certain amount of curriculum too. There will be a certain amount of content in there teaching the terrain philosophy, how to operate within the terrain framework, within a responsible framework. How do we take responsibility for our health? Because there's certain mindset shifts that are necessary to get back into rhythm with nature, right? So fostering some of that. There's sort of different levels to this, but really the community was my way of making it accessible rather than doing, a high ticket coaching or, different one-on-one sessions can be quite costly. The community was my way of making it accessible and trying to tailor it to be as individual as possible because health is so individual. On my podcast, I've interviewed, 75 people at this point, health experts, all kind of in the train mindset as well. And I asked them all, what is health? How do you define health? And every single week, it's a different answer. And so even though a lot of us are talking about the same things, we have different answers for what health is, what it means, how it manifests. So health is extremely individual. What your health journey versus my health journey are going to be two very different things. And, I hope the community really gets that. That's what I really want. I want the essence of the community to get that individuality of it, right? There's not necessarily a black or white. It's just learning how to flow. And that's sort of the wisdom that I'm trying to pass on.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that sounds cool. I really believe, like, I have a coach myself, and when we started, I told him, like, I know the answers are in me. I just need somebody to help me and articulate them, if that makes sense. So I think your approach is top notch for sure. It made me curious. You said like everyone has their own approach to health. What is yours?
Mhm. I mean, fundamentally, it's getting back to natural principles. And this is where the individuality comes in, right? Because I'm in an office right now in a building. I have drywall, the air is probably not the best. But right now, this is what I have, so how can I improve my space? So I'm in an office. I have my office chair. I'm currently sitting on the floor to try and get back to nature in that way. It's an easy way to kind of get back to nature is sitting on the floor. Sitting in a chair is not necessarily the most natural thing. I have these Swedish stall bears behind me where I can do movement, so I'm not stagnating in my office. I have as much natural materials around me. I have a snake plants. I have a lot of plants in my office to try to purify the air. Again, getting back to these natural principles. How do I bring nature into my life, right? Because it's not as easy as going and living a nomadic life in the woods, right? That would be fun, and we like to do that. We like to go camping and all that stuff, but how do we bring nature into our lives? So it looks different for everyone, right? I do work right now. I have a counseling therapy practice, and so I do wilderness and outdoor therapy is the main focus of my practice. So I do outdoor counseling and therapy. I take people outside. So that's my way of, getting out of the office, right? Working with people and um again, it's like these are the principles I'm trying to put into my life. So for me, I do think that there's a certain objectivity to the statement that health and um nature are one. Like there's so many quotes about it. Getting back to nature is the essence of health. Adapting to a natural environment is the essence of health. When you observe primitive people in their primitive environments, they don't have the modern diseases that we do. Our modern diseases are caused by modern environments and our body's adapting to these modern environments, right? So incorporating as much nature into your environment as you can, getting outside, yeah, it's all to do with the nature. That's it.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, cool. Let's go back on the community that you're going to launch.
Sure.
Do you have a strategy in place? How will it look like when it's there? When is it going to come?
I don't have a launch date per se. I'm thinking within the next month or two is 2 months would be too long. So it's looking really good. It just kind of depends on how much time uh I can put into it. I'm putting hours and hours a day into it. It just depends if I can put 8 hours a day or 5 hours a day into it. So it kind of depends on that. But yeah, it's coming very soon.
Okay, cool, cool. And do you have an idea of the kind of actions that you're going to take to get as many people inside of the community?
Yeah, of course. And I like to think that I've built some ground, some foundation here, with the podcast and with the social media I've put out. a significant amount of free content, and I'll continue to do so, so I think that free content piece is big. Now, maybe working on funnels, how to get people onto the websites, how to get people into the community, how to offer in a free trial, different things like that, right? There's many different strategies that we can employ. And again, like health, a lot of these principles that I'm talking about, I apply to business, finances, my spiritual life, my psychological life. I think there is some sort of underlying process here that I'm employing, right? So when it comes to launching a community, there is a certain amount of trial and error, right? Everyone's community is going to be different, just like health. And, how I'm going to go about getting people into the community is going to look different than what might be optimal for someone else. So a little bit of trial and error. I'd like to have that free trial for sure. Offer parts of the community where people can access it for free, and then have stuff gated behind a paywall. Just depending on the what the members willing or capable to pay, or what value they see in it. And I hope that people still find a lot of value in my free stuff as well, so, um, and I think it's an energy thing, I think the amount of energy that you put into it will directly correlate to the amount of success that you have, right? Because money, is a form of energy, and often we work an hour and we get paid an hourly wage, and that's our energy exchange. So we work 1 hour at this level of labor and we get this amount of money. So money is just a form of energy, and it's a tool. It's a store of energy in a way. So, um, putting as much energy as I can into the community, building it up to be the most positive platform and atmosphere that I can have, right? Because I want people to come, and I'd love people to stick around, but I want people to join the community, and I want them to eventually leave the community, because I want them to feel like, all right, I'm good. I feel like I have the tools. I feel like I have the framework. I feel like I can go out and live my best life. I don't need to consult. I don't need to search. I'm not longing for anything. The only reason that we have this longing is because we're not growing up in natural environments, so hopefully fostering that. And I think that having that good intention, again, I'm not trying to trap people in the community and be like, you can never leave and I'm just going to get my paycheck, right? Going into it with the right intention is the best for longevity as well, because I really want to build something that's going to last for years. And hopefully some people just love it and want to stick around and share, and, share their own wisdom, right? Because I really open that, or encourage that open dialogue, right? So different things like that. And I know that's kind of a more roundabout way to answer the question, but if you want more specifics, I can go back and cover those.
No, it's an amazing answer, especially the intention that you have. I think it's definitely the right one. If you start off with, I want to keep them as long as possible hooked. I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. I think in your way, people are going to stay longer because it's with the right intention, and they will feel that it will come across that way. So that's definitely the way to go. How So you have your social media, you have your podcast, you have YouTube. How are these, or how are you going to use them to grow the community?
hmm hmm Yeah, at the moment, it's mostly just a little shout out to myself, shouting out my community, mentioning like, when I'm discussing topics, referring back to, yeah, this is exactly why I built the community, like, because it comes out all the time, because I'm putting my life force behind this community, and I put my life force into the videos that I make and the content that I make. So when I'm making the content, it's very natural for me to be like, there's only so much I can say in a 60-second Instagram reel. But, and it's general. It's very hard to make general statements. I think it's possible to have, some sort of logical axioms when it comes to health, nature, wellness, whatever it may be. Same with business, there's definitely some axioms that we can fundamentally agree are universally true. But, when it comes to more specific stuff, people ask me, and, if I make a video on something more specific, it's like, listen, I wanna know, like, your experience with this. If we wanna dive into it, we need to have a dialogue. It's impossible for me to talk to you through a screen and impart any true wisdom, right? Because The only thing that that does is hopefully stimulates some sort of self-exploration in the person on the other side, because they can come to the answers. But through a dialogue, we can kind of work together and learn from each other and teach each other at the same time, and hopefully dive deeper into the specifics of the topics we're discussing, right? So having that just reference point to the community, to the why, right? And trying to showcase, the effort and the care that I'm putting into it. Not just it being, some money grab or something. It's like this is like what I'm the most passionate about in the entire world, and trying to convey that positive message rather than just it be buy my course and leave me alone and let me go and vacation. you know.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I like what you say about content being very general in some ways. Like it's very hard to be nuanced in a single piece of content of 60 seconds because you only have 60 seconds and you don't have the story of the person watching it. How do you try and keep the balance between keeping that nuance in your content piece, if my question makes sense?
hmm Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult balance to strike, and you often just end up getting a bunch of comments saying, well, I actually this happened to me. This happened to me. So you're wrong. This happened to me. Because when you get too specific and you leave out a few of the outliers comment, right? So you're like working on the back end to try and fix it. To be like, yeah, actually, like I'm not trying to deny your reality because, people are it's their journey, right? And health is so important, right? Because it can take you down. It can affect the rest of your life. So it's very emotionally charged for a lot of people. And trying to make these, general statements that try to apply to as many people as you possibly can and try to be universally true. Yeah, they're difficult to make. But diving into the specifics here and there, it's just honestly like causes a headache. So my goal is to really try to remain within the confines of the fundamental axioms of health. Like I'm really trying to develop these based on logic, pure logic, and introducing, what are the conditions. Like when I make a claim like, you know, germs don't cause disease. And then I know what comments are going to come. Oh, well, I had an infection and it almost whatever. You know, I know what's coming. So I try to introduce, yeah, actually germs are at the site of disease, but they're not the root cause. They're actually responding to toxicity. And I try to um, explain it out as best I can in that 60 seconds. And then, I my funnel, really is kind of Instagram, which is those general statements to try to be universally true, moving into the YouTube channel where I can discuss a little bit more broadly and try to cover more specifics, more conditions. And then I can cover, 6 categories of why germs don't cause disease and all the reasons and arguments against, and, still operating within our objective realities, because there's a certain amount of there is an objective reality, there is certainly that, and trying to come up with, words to explain that fit into people's narrative is a very difficult thing. So trying to remain as true to the objective reality is very important because operating within, almost the subjectivity of the narratives we tell ourselves is nearly impossible to do anything generally, right? So if anything, I'm just trying to take those common subjective interpretations and explain them out, kind of give a reason and bring it back to this more objective logical axiom, why this axiom is fundamentally true and why all of these experiences that we have still fit within this, objective fundamental point, but it doesn't deny our reality either. We just need to change the narrative. Like we're not fighting, our bodies aren't fighting a war. We're not we're not battling and defending, like our immune system is a misnomer. We call it an immune system. We think that our bodies are defending itself against external invaders. I don't think that that's true. And I think the immune system is a misnomer. Now, I don't deny the reality. There are immune cell structures, right? Like there's white blood cells and there's macrophages. And I think these play an extremely delicate role. And I think that their role, there might be misnamed as well. But again, we need to change the narrative there. So trying to change the narrative into something that is objective, that is true, fundamentally true, is very difficult. And social media is not the best platform for academic discussion. So, yeah, that's again partly reason why the community was created, because I really do value people's experiences, but you need to have that conversation, and it just doesn't take place in comment sections on Instagram, right? So it's one of the downsides of the platform.
Mhm. Yeah, I can imagine. It's like the one place that everybody projects their frustrations when they hear something like, "Oh, that's not true," or "I don't believe in that." Um, yeah, I can imagine. You create a lot of content. Do you have some kind of strategy in place that you know I want to post X times on these days, or how do you go about it?
Mm. Yeah. I do not have a content calendar. I've never had a content calendar. I often don't plan out my content. It's kind of interesting, it's very unplanned and kind of just I let it flow. I record all my YouTube videos when I walk my dog. So I'll take my dog for a hike, which he obviously loves, and I just take I have a little tripod and a little wired microphone. I put my phone on airplane mode and I hit record. Sometimes I have some notes with me, and um I'll record like a YouTube video, and it might take me an hour, hour and a half or whatever. And I'm out in nature and I just try to enjoy it, and I pause and I reflect and I play with the dog. And so really try to enjoy the process. I find like, a lot of content creation is really boring. Like, if I was sitting in my office creating content, trying to edit it to make it, more appealing to, and keep your attention all the time, optimize it for the algorithm and for all of our short attention spans. It's just not me. It's not my approach. I like to do it naturally. I like to let it flow. Same with the Instagram videos. Like if I'm like, oh, I haven't posted on Instagram today, and it's, I have some time before supper, I'm like, oh, I'll go out into the yard and I'll film a little video, and I'll just off the cuff, like just let it flow. I try not to record things when I force it. I burnt out. I uploaded, on Instagram like every single day for a really long time, for not, yeah, it wasn't about a year. It was like 10 months. I had uploaded every day on Instagram, and I was doing the podcast on a weekly basis. I didn't burn out from the podcast. I thought that was a really reasonable amount to post, but the Instagram burnt me out. And I got married in the summer, last summer, and the week of the wedding, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna delete Instagram. I never had Instagram. Like I had it when I was in high school, and then I deleted it, and then I got it back eventually, and then I started posting on it, and then so I deleted it. And once I deleted it, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna get Instagram back. I was like, oh, I don't want anything to do with it. Uh, so I think, you know, there's a couple kind of points that I'm trying to pull out of this little story here is, um, I like to make sure that it's natural and I don't force it, and I found the reason I burnt out was because I had this expectation of myself that I had to post every single day. And then when I gave myself the opportunity to get rid of Instagram, I didn't post for like months, like 2 or 3 months. And then I was like, you know what? I want to start posting again. And so I re-downloaded it, and I told myself, I'm just going to let it flow naturally. And I started posting once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Now I'm posting like every day because I really love it right now. And I'm on like a content high, I guess you could say. But it's just natural, so there'll be cycles where I'm probably gonna slow down with the Instagram content. I find that's the most difficult for me, is making those short reels is the most difficult. So, again, it's knowing myself, right? Comes back to that principle. I know that YouTube doesn't burn me out. Going for a hike and recording, like, a YouTube video about topics that I love, talking in depth about them, that doesn't burn me out because I love it so much. The 60-second hook, you know, get them in, reel them in, and, call to action and automation, reply to comments. It's brutal.
Mm.
That's just me though. So I just do it intuitively. I just, gotta let it flow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very draining. Like the keeping control over everything and thinking about every little aspect and trying to fine tune it, and then no, it's not good enough, let's go back, and then you have the comments, you have to go about that, like it sucks all of the energy out of you. What helps me is I don't have Instagram on my phone. Like watching someone else live his or her life isn't making me happy, so why should I force myself to watch it? So yeah. Okay, nice. Um, how do you personally stay grounded? Like, don't lose yourself in all of the information that is available about being it held of now with your community, like growing a community. Like, how do you focus on one thing and keep following that path?
Mm. My wife really helps me stay grounded. She like, if it wasn't for her, I'd be up probably 20 hours a day working on some sort of project. I just would work my 20s and probably 30s and eventually my life away. Um, she really helps me because she motivates me a lot to, let's just sit on the couch and let's just talk about our day or the dog. We talk about our dog all the time. We have a baby on the way, so we've been talking a lot about that. And,
Congrats.
we'll play a game of chess now. She's all into chess. She's so competitive, so she's trying to beat me, and I'm not very good at chess. I'm honestly a terrible chess player, but I'm a little bit better than her, which drives her crazy. And she's the best, man. I think family as well. I love spending time with my parents. My sister whenever she's up visiting, and my in-laws. I got some really good friends that I consider family. I love calling them on the phone, and sometimes we talk about serious stuff. Like, sometimes we talk about business, sometimes we talk about health, sometimes we talk about that, and sometimes we just talk about nothing, and we just enjoy each other's company, and we laugh, and we joke, and, to me, that's been the most grounding thing, is having that family, community feeling that I think is lost. I think we've certainly lost this aspect of our lives, and it's a totally natural thing, when we think of the tribal life, right? It's like, I couldn't imagine we got a kid on the way, and, like, I couldn't imagine trying to raise a baby without, like, relatives close or friends around, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't seem right. Like, I know a lot of people do it, and, I understand why a lot of them do it, but, like, to me, like, it takes a village, and my wife always says that, "It takes a village."
Mm.
And it takes a village with everything, man, like, building my I have a practice, an in-person practice, right? And trying to build that. It's community, it's networking, and I've been to the networking meetings. I've networked all up and down Halifax, and the best networking was just like knowing people in the community, like people that I was already acquainted with that, I talk to. I don't try to shill my business. I just try to get to know them, and they want to get to know me and know what I'm doing. And, my business, my health, and my, what I'm interested in is all part of me, but that grounded piece is family, community, is just nature, man. Is just getting back to what's natural.
Mhm. Mhm. That's nice. You're still a very young dude, right?
Yeah,
You
I think so.
I hear you talking about marriage, about having a kid. Does it scare you sometimes?
I think I'd be more scared if I didn't have kids. If I didn't have a kid on the way, or if I wasn't married, I think that would scare me more. Because I've been there, man. Like, listen, like it's a different type of worry, I guess. And I try not to worry, and I don't think that I do. I have faith, man. I have faith. I'm not worried about. should I raise a kid in this, toxic world? I don't worry about that stuff, and I have faith that everything is gonna work out as it should. Um, so I really try not to worry, but if there's ever a sliver of doubt, I can look at my past, because I wasn't always the way that I am now, and I've lived that rambling lifestyle, and I was empty. Life was totally meaningless. It was constantly trying to engage in something better or something new, never being satisfied with what you have, constantly chasing, running away. And I just know what meaningless feels like, and I know now what meaningful feels like. So that really keeps me on track. And I find I don't really have to go there anymore. When you live a really meaningful life, like you don't have to go back there. It's a part of me. I'm not ashamed of anything that I've done. It's led to who I am now, and I think I really try to be the best version of myself, best family member, community member, content creator. I try not to create shit content, and I think I'm putting out a good message to the world. In my opinion, it's true to what I believe, and so that's a big part of it. Those are all foundational. But that faith piece, that's big. You just gotta have faith. Just have
Mhm.
faith.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel that. Like, I have a saying like I speak Dutch, that's my mother language, and it's in English it's like everything is always gonna be fine. I really believe that like even if it doesn't seem like the case, like tomorrow is still going to be shit or in a month it's still going to be shit. Like there is gonna be a time where it's not shit anymore and it's just perfectly fine. So yeah, that's cool to hear that from you. Is there any lesson that you keep relearning as you grow as a person, as you grow as a business?
Mm, yeah, it's a constant cycle. It's so interesting. It's like you learn all these lessons and then you learn them again, and then you learn them again, and you just keep learning kind of the same lesson over and over again, and but in different ways. If life is trying to teach you the exact same thing, then you're not learning. So I think, and this is kind of more the spiritual side of me than anything, if you're learning the exact same thing, you're not learning. So life's going to throw at you different situations, but if you can boil it down to the exact same lesson over and over again, you're not learning. If the same thing keeps happening over and over, you should be fluorescing. You should be moving through a cycle. So when I say I feel like I'm cyclically learning all these same lessons, sometimes it may be reminders. Sometimes it may be slightly different, but means a lot. Like there's a reason why I had to learn this lesson in this way, but it's not the exact same thing. It's kind of rewritten in a way. There's like a condition. Like, yes, you learn this lesson, but in this instant, this is good. Stuff like that, right? So you don't want to learn the same lesson over and over again because then you're not learning. But you at the same time, like you want to, if you're not going to learn, you need to keep going through the exact same thing to master, to become the best version of yourself. So you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to, am I getting in the same argument over and over with this person? Am I constantly turning back on, the promises that I've made to myself? Like, say you want to, like, I struggled a lot with smoking weed back in the day. And like, and there were periods of time in my life where I would go back to it. And then I learned the same lesson because I wasn't learning. So I was an idiot. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't looking at the lesson that was so clearly being taught to me over and over that I should have learned in high school, but I didn't learn in high school. I had to face the same situation over and over and over again until I've learned the lesson. And now it's like, well, I look back and I'm like, wow, it's so obvious. So I guess the best lesson was, you got to pay attention. If you're not, self observation is self correction. If you want to learn about yourself, if you want to correct yourself, if you want to build your esteem, if you want to do anything, it starts with self-observation. You have to pay attention. That's the best lesson I think that I could say right now.
Mhm. Mhm. Being aware is so important, and it's funny to hear you say that you struggled with weed because I had the same thing. Like, yeah, it's just, but it's really a stubborn addiction. Like, it's suddenly it happens. You tell yourself stuff like, okay, this is my last joint. I'm not going to smoke anymore. And then after 5 days, you're telling yourself, "What? Oh, I managed 5 days. Like, I can treat myself with a joint." Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How did you eventually quit with it? What changed your mind? Like, this time it's for real.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, like, you convince yourself that, like, you're okay when you do it. Like, you're like I had myself convinced that, like, I was a better person when I did it. It was so weird, and that's when I was smoking, like, every day, and then eventually I weaned off and it was more casual, and I did it casually, and so I went tree planting, actually, and I was planting trees, and then, like, the first day off, you'd work 4 days, you'd have 1 day off, and so on the day off, like, I got stoned, and then, like, the 3 days after, I was like an emotional wreck, but I was just, I was in Northern Ontario, we were on the most northern paved road in Ontario, out in the middle of nowhere, like, there was nothing around. We were, obviously camping out, right, for that couple months that I was tree planting. And, it was just pure raw nature. I was just exposed to myself purely, and I realized, like, I was an emotional wreck. And, it's funny, I didn't quit there. I shoulda learned the lesson, again, still casually. And then I'd be, like, dysregulated, emotionally unable to cope. I wasn't able to cope with reality. My expectations were off. I was expecting so much. I was expecting dopamine stimulation, and I wasn't motivated. I didn't wanna go and build anything. I just wanted to consume, consume, consume. The time that it changed was, like, who's the person that I wanna be? Do I wanna be someone that does this, that feels this way? Absolutely not. So it was that narrative shift of who do I wanna be? Is the person that I wanna be doing this? That's ultimately what really shifted that mentality. And so, my wife and I, we knew that we wanted kids, so what helped me was realizing, like, do I want to raise a kid with a father who smokes pot, even casually, and it was like, no, like, absolutely not. Like, both my parents were sober and they went through the ringer with their own battles with addiction and stuff when they were younger, but they were sober while they raised my sister and I completely. And I think that was one of the most amazing things that they did. And they did a lot of work to do that. And they gave up this hoping with reality. Like, they weren't dissatisfied with reality. They accepted their reality and they, operated within it. They weren't trying to escape. They weren't trying to, and they knew that that's not the person they wanted to be weren't people who drank or smoked or whatever. Right. So that's what changed for me was asking myself, like, is this the person that I want to be? Do I want to be the person who, when the weekend hits or when things get hard, I go home and I buy a joint and I roll it up and I smoke it? Like, is that the type of person that I wanna be? Or when things get hard, do I wanna double down? Do I wanna, I'm tired, I'm sick and tired, I'm, cranky, I'm ornery, whatever it is. Do I wanna be the person that's gonna push through and get home, and even though the dishes need to be done, I still do them. I don't leave them to the next morning, and that's like the end of the day, like, it's like there's so many things along the way. It's like today, like, so easy to roll over and not do anything and be unproductive while I don't have a client or something. But it's like, do I want to work on this community? Do I want to build something meaningful and positive? What type of person do I want to be? Who is the person I want to be right now, like today? Because it's funny. It's like you tell yourself these lies, like, oh, I'm going to be the best version of myself when this happens. But you've totally failed. You've totally missed the plot if that's what you're saying to yourself, Live the life you wanna live, be the person you wanna be before all of these conditions. You'll create your reality. You wanna move to Europe and, live in Italy or something, you gotta live that lifestyle before that happens. Why are you waiting to go on vacation to get up in the morning and go to a coffee shop and enjoy a pain au chocolat and a latte, you know what I mean? Like, why are you waiting for vacation to do that? Do that in your everyday life, like, live the life you wanna live, be the person that you want to be right now. You don't need to wait for anything. You don't need money, you don't need whatever, like, you wanna start woodworking, woodworking is seemingly expensive, but you can still start. You just have to put a little bit more effort into it. You can make it cheaper. You could buy secondhand tools, you could go in and, learn about trees and which tree you want and go into the forest and harvest your own lumber and then woodwork, you know what I mean? Like there's no, the only gatekeeping thing, like the only thing gatekeeping you from the life you want is effort and energy. It's not money. Money is just a form of energy. That might make it easier. You can go and buy beautiful walnut and do woodworking and make huge projects, but it's just a form of energy. If I really wanted to, I could start woodworking. It's just kind of a funny little example.
Mhm.
And it's true. I want to start woodworking. I love the idea of it. And I lie to myself and say, well, it's too expensive. I need to buy all of these chisels and you know, I gotta buy all this lumber and it's so expensive. Hardwood is so expensive. It's like, yeah, but I could learn how to whittle and I could just go and harvest my own wood. Like I know what hardwood is, you know what I mean? Like I can go and harvest it myself. So I'm like lying to myself. If I truly want to start woodworking, why am I waiting to have more money? Maybe it's just not a priority right now, which may be true. Maybe I got bigger things right now, but it's a goal of mine.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's cool to hear. It's so much easier to give in to the excuses of, not today, I'm gonna do the dishes tomorrow. And it's when you really set a vision for yourself, like, that's the person that I want to be, and tell yourself that's the person that I am, that you'll start taking action. It's still going to be hard to be that person and to take the action, but it for sure helped me to push through the really hard moments where when you don't have the motivation, when you just want to do nothing, to be like, damn, I really have to do the thing that I need to do because I am that person. And then I go sit behind my desk like, oh, ah, but still you do it. And that's the most important part. Uh, so yeah, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Where can people connect with you, follow your work, eventually join the Beyond Terrain community?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. There's no guarantee that I'll post there forever. So YouTube's probably the better place to follow what I'm doing. The website's great, beyondterrain.com. I'm Beyond Terrain on everything. YouTube, Instagram. I have a blog on my website. I post periodically some articles kind of diving deeper into the topics. Yeah, the YouTube's great. Often that's connected to the blog. We talk about similar topics. But yeah, the community, you can go to my website, beyondterrain.com, and join the waitlist if you're interested in the community. There'll be updates on the website as well regarding the community as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you're listening to this, go join the community. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be, everything that we're talking about today is really like what I'm putting into the community, right? It's like these fundamental things that we're discussing and, Sam's a great host and he was really able to pull out some good info, I think, and I was hopefully able to answer in a good way. And but this is really what the community is about. This is what it's all about is trying to impart this and how do you foster this in other people, and trying to inspire and yeah, just always become the best version of myself. That's really my goal. That's it.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Liev. Have a nice one.
Thank you. You too.